Live. Hello and welcome to Foreign and Domestic Unfiltered Podcast. I'm your host, Ramon Mile. This is episode 34. We got Justin Chairs here, folks. Mr. Chairs, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Feeling blessed and highly favored. How y'all? Feeling blessed and highly favored. How y'all?
I'm doing well, Ramon. I'm doing well.
Great intro, but I have to say,
Great intro, but normally something that was normally
it sounds so much better
something
coming
I
out of your
would,
mouth.
it sounds so much better.
I'm
Here. I'm excited.
I'm
here. I'm
to
excited.
have another guest on.
To have another guest on.
Season.
We come around.
It's always
to
good
to kind of pick the brain and learn a bit more about
to kind of pick the brain and learn
those who are going to be
about
potentially representing.
those who are going to be
potentially representing
citizens
now.
now.
So very excited.
For sure.
Absolutely.
All right, and just to give some background, I got here Mr. Chairs. He holds a bachelor's degree from Hartwick College and a graduate from Grand Canyon University. He is the youngest of 5 children. He is married. His wife is a nurse, and he has 4 children. And he's also vice president of the Schenectady NAACP. And Mr. Chairs, I believe you're doing substitute work now, right? Is it still at the Albany Charter School?
No, I'm substituting right in Schenectady right now. We're Lincoln, MLK, and hit elementaries locally.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. Nice. Okay, so let's get right into it today, man. So Mr. Chairs is running for Assembly District 111. His opponent is Angelo Santa Barbara, a name that is, rings bells quite well around these parts. I'm sure everybody's going to be familiar with him. And the point of today is for you to get familiar with Mr. Chairs. So just real quick, Justin, just easy opening question. Take as long as you like and expand as much as you want. What, why are you running? What need do you see that has to be filled that you don't think currently is, or that you could do better in this district?
Oh, absolutely. For me, I'm running coming from education. It was all about my kids. As I constantly worked hard as an advocate and special education director and doing everything I can for the families inside my community, I want to make sure that they always had the best. And by being able to run and represent them as a New York State Assemblyman, I get the opportunity to bring the best to them. There's so many things that we are missing currently that our current legislator won't vote for, won't touch, or won't stand behind. This community is extremely diverse, and it needs and deserves everything possible to get it past that line. There's so much happening. There's growth that's coming in from the federal side of things, but our state sometimes lags behind proper representation. So I have the opportunity to bring that forward here in the 111th district.
All right, that sounds good, man. Sounds good. And also I should mention, just full disclosure here, me and Mr. Chairs played football like forever together. So, I'm a huge homer, folks. I mean, everyone who watches this show knows that when we have political candidates on, that I don't, I choose sides. Okay. Mr. Chairs is.
I'm much more pragmatic, I promise.
But yeah, no, Mr. Chairs is near and dear to my heart, and I actually, just on a personal level, before we get in a little further, I should have done this earlier in the beginning, but it's really it's so serendipitous that I feel like I've devoted a lot of my learning time that I've spent in my adulthood of the last 7 years towards politics, and that someone that I grew up with, that I spent a lot of time with, is directly involved in, a very important facet of that. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm a much love, brother, and I'm so glad that you came on today. But now that let's pivot back to the interview. I just wanted to get that out.
Man, thank you.
All right. So here we go. Now that we got the groundwork laid a little bit, I definitely want to, just again for the viewers, we're trying to get a basic understanding of what your main policy platform planks will be, what your priorities will be if you do get in the assembly. Can you just real quick for us give us your top 3 things that you will push, legislation that you would like to sponsor when and if you win?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's an education, as we know, from the education system. big in my healthcare, as I see how it impacts housing and childcare. It's so hard to know. I'm already learning from politics. You try to always take that extra one to throw in there, right? But there's so much that I do want to get done. Those are I would say my top three or four in no particular order. Education being number one, as I see the investment that needs to be done in education to further the future for our areas that are coming up.
All right, yeah, so definitely education. Okay, that sounds good, man. Patter, do you want anything? You want to throw any questions in before I start moving on? You got anything for him?
What? Well, yeah, I was just wondering if there was, a lot of the reasons that a lot of people get into politics is, they see a need, right? And they want to address it. Obviously, you're speaking from an education standpoint. Was there any specific politicians or people in public service that you looked up to and saw, saw something in them that made you want to get into it as well?
Absolutely. If we're talking about big figures, I always look at John Lewis and some of the things that he did on that congressional level. But real personally for me, my family is huge in the area. As activists, as civil rights leaders, some of the first black council members to ever be elected in Schenectady. A lot of first that came from my family too. First officer, fire chief, and for me, I've always grown up in that mindset as a man that has the ability to make positive change and doesn't take it. So I had to step up from everything that I've seen. And I kept watching families that struggled, to secure housing, safe and sustainable jobs, to work through and make sure that their healthcare covered, simple basic medications for my children in special need. And then I also saw the immediate impact of gun violence in the area, as I had lost some scholars when I was in Albany as well. Broke my heart. I was the guy that told my kids that no matter where they were in the world, I have their back. This is my promise being fulfilled. I'll step to the next level so I can keep having their back.
Love it. And it's easy sometimes to throw your hands in the air and these things happen. It's always admirable to see someone who sees something, an issue, and then stepping right into it, see if they can change it. So on that.
Thank you.
All right.
Go on, Ramon. Give him the quick fire.
So here we go. Before we hop into that, I just want to, real quick, Justin. I know that when I last spoke with you the other weekend, you mentioned that you had some internal polling that showed you in quite a favorable light. Could you expand on that? Because I know that some of the people I spoke to about this race, your candidacy definitely piqued their interest. I know that, Santa Barbara has been a mainstay for a while now, and this is certainly extreme time for, political change on all sides of all areas of the political spectrum. What are you seeing leading up to this, with early voting starting in less than 10 days?
Honestly, when we look at our data from knocking doors, I've been out here for months, as you know, constantly speaking to everyone, getting talking to them plainly, being extremely conservative with what I'm hearing from them. If they say they're 100% supporting me, I have to understand. This is a big change. This is the opportunity to make a difference. Thing that I'm saying that I love the most is that people are asking questions. People are going to do research. They're looking at what is actually being voted on in legislation, and not just who's showing up and smiling. And as I get back through the second round, I was just door knocking, amazing turnout, a bunch of positive ideas. I think I did a total 30 doors before I got back here. I think we finished with 18 positive IDs. Ones were just not homes. That's an outstanding numbers to represent. That's a great turn. That's a great turn. As we're out and my campus are out getting more volunteers. It's been amazing to have people stop in my office downtown Schenectady, see my door open, they just come in to talk. They'd have never had that has like that open door policy. I want to be accessible. People are extremely receptive to this right now. So I'm excited to be able to be the next representative, things the right way.
Mm-hmm. I'd passed your office the other day, right there on the corner of J, right? Next to Tara Kitchen. Go next door and get some good Moroccan food right there too.
I can. Kitchen and Flow Queen. I'm trying not to put on this weight.
Nice.
Yeah. 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 Say yeah. Yeah. Say yeah. Yeah. It's I am definitely feeling the momentum. The team is feeling the momentum. It's like building a car. It's like building a car. Referencing, right? It's like building a car. It's like put the engine in, and you got to make sure the body's right, and then all of a sudden you get, and then all of a sudden you tires that go with it, and you turn this engine, you're waiting, right? So that's 2020, right? So that's 2020. I'm waiting. I feel it wants to kick over, but it's not there yet. But it's not there. Building, and I see all the wins from the people that we supported, and the change that happened. And then it just keeps going, and then I'm getting this positive response. And even in my original venture going against Paul Tonko, who was one of the most well-entrenched New York congresspersons that we know, right? We never backed down. It was the conversations that we had. And then it opened the door to have a different conversation with Paul and other community leaders, where they're like, this is a real serious thing. This is not a once-in-a-lifetime moment. He's not just out here. He actually really wants to represent the community. And the community feels that too and understands where I'm coming from. And they know I'm just out being me. And all of a sudden, we're in this beautiful month of June, and it's just hitting on all cylinders, where that engine is purring perfect. We're stepping on the accelerator, and we're just on the highway, and we're the only ones out here right now. It's like, first thing in the morning, we beat work traffic. We're just going, so it's a beautiful thing.
I was going to make a gas joke there, but it's a touchy subject for a lot of people.
It is. I can't step on the gas too hard.
I hope it's a hybrid, at least, this car you're building.
Listen, 100%. I had to convert last year because the tax cap that we passed wasn't enough, because we're coming up on $5 per gallon. So it is definitely a hybrid.
Oh my goodness. Oh, you guys are crazy. Yeah, the gas thing. Oh my God. Some real pain at the pump, man. Especially driving up to Saratoga. I'm seeing those prices up there. Woo.
Oh,
that's crazy. I work with
Lord Jesus.
But it actually, you know what? Before we pivot to full-on policy, I do have one more thing that I wanted to ask you about that I actually wasn't aware of. So I read that you were you served on the Schenectady Civilian Police Review Board, investigating police misconduct, which that committee, or I should say review board, got a mandate from the then Governor Cuomo after the death of George Floyd. Can you tell us what was that process like? Because I know that as far as people, a lot of voters right now that will be hearing this and that will have you on their ballot, a huge portion of them will live in the city of Schenectady, and obviously policing in Schenectady has been a hot button topic for years now, even before George Floyd, and that just exacerbated it. What was that experience like? What was, how did you feel about the receptiveness of the Schenectady Police Department? I hear varying things from activists and politicians alike of what that environment is like. What was that like on that review board, and what do you feel you accomplished while on it?
It was interesting. Definitely interesting to take a look and dive into that. For me, I also stepped in as the chair of public safety through the NAACP. So I still am constantly working with Chief Clifford. I took that on as an appointment. We were down so many people on the board at one point. As well as Carl Wims, who had to step down because he was running for city council. Make sure he was in compliance. So I stepped in a few times back and forth, took over as the chair of public safety, where I work with the board regularly. I think that it has the right means. I think there's some things that need to be improved on. As I'm working with the current new board president and some of the members that have stepped in. making sure that every organization was originally supposed to be a part of it has a member on this board has been difficult. This was broken up. This was broken up like members such as like NAACP, Urban Youth. Like these are all groups that wanted to have representation to make sure that it was community based. So getting some of the organizations obviously are not as active as they used to be. So it's like making sure that find organizations that are representing, we're looking to make sure that's doing best. Looking at some of the policies and going over some of the situations that occurred. And making sure that I'm being unbiased when it comes to the profession, looking at what an officer did, and that I'm asking hard questions. I wasn't there to be anyone's friend at the time. It was a moment of let's make sure that you're doing the right thing in the name of public safety. That the officer did the correct thing here, and if they didn't, I'm going to tell Chief Clifford they didn't, and I'm not here to just give you a rubber stamp. I want answers. I need to know what it is. Can we talk to the officer? Can we see the other paperwork? I need more. So I took great pride in being able to do that. And I want the next group that steps in here to have a little more power, I think, is going to be needed to make sure that we stay on track with what's happening in the proper movement of community policing going forward. I think that is going to be a huge part of what needs to be done. I know that may not always be the popular answer, but, Schenectady is a close-knit community, and you don't police Schenectady like a militarized zone. Most of the families here have been here in the county for a long time. You would know one person in their family or another, and I want to make sure that my officers understand the importance of being community members as well.
Right, and just to expand on that, something like a civilian police review board, in my opinion, is something that's very important and needed. I've spoke on the show before. My father was a cop back in Ireland, and even at the best of times, it's a thankless job being a policeman. Obviously, things are different in America. We all know what we see when we see those videos. George Floyd and countless others. But with the protections at times that police get, it often feels like they're not being scrutinized enough. Well, they're being scrutinized, but not, I guess, reprimanded enough. So something like that is very needed. And to tag along with the community policing aspect of it, I think that is the number one way that you actually, really help the communities as a policeman, rather than just being there policing and waiting for someone to do something wrong, right? Hand in hand almost within a community. So I love that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's something that we did a couple episodes, especially after the George Floyd protests and that gripped the country. And I've always held the position that it's great to know that folks like you and people that you've worked with, because I know you personally. I know that you have a solid set of morals and a good head on your shoulders. I've always held the position that growing up in Schenectady, I feel like Schenectady is, from personal experience and from looking at the numbers, that Schenectady is uniquely positioned of having a lot of police who live in the community, or at least very close, compared to like Albany, Troy. So that's good to hear that you at least you didn't just come in here with scorched earth. And with that type of feeling after being in that position. So that is somewhat reassuring. And that's certainly something that we want to keep covering more in the future, because I know that that's an ongoing process, and it seems like it really hasn't been much of a resolved issue around, just general police reforms. So something to keep an eyeball on, folks, that we need to dedicate some more coverage to. And I'm sure in this electoral push here this year, we'll probably get at more.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so and pivoting right off of that, I'd like to bring up just real quick to button up the electoral area here. I have here a little bit of digging that I did on Justin's opponent, Santa Barbara's voting record, and there are quite a few questionable votes here. And I just want to ask Justin his opinion on some of these things. I have the bill numbers and some of the details of them, and I'd like to ask him, if these are things that he would support if he were in the assembly in that seat, because I feel like it's relevant. Not to play Monday morning quarterback here, but, some of these things are just dead obvious things that the majority of the Democratic Party wants. And indeed, every one of these that I'm about to list were supported by the overwhelming majority of Democrats in the assembly. And they all were passed through the Senate and signed into law, every one that I'm about to name. So right now, I want to look at, let me see, the first one we'll pick here, excuse me. Extending voting rights to convicted felons on parole. It was S830, passed the House on the 21st of April last year, overwhelmingly. Now, when you expand on this, it's pretty simple. It's not really, it doesn't get extremely granular. It's exactly what it sounds like. I think that a lot of people who talk about police reform, pivoting off this last topic that we were on, they don't reconnect the rehabilitation factors of people who are involved in being incarcerated, whether it be city, state, or federal prison. Justin, I'd like to get that. I'd like to, pose that to you. Would that be something you would support? Whether it be people on parole or folks being re-enfranchised after serving their time, and do you think that's conducive to helping people feel like they're being accepted back into society?
Absolutely. I mean, I am, as I say, Vice President NAACP. I don't stand for voter suppression in any way. So when we talk about people who are coming back in reentry, these are community members that I want the ability to, one, have the reinvestment in what you're voting for, right? Your vote is your word, and that's how you see who's going to govern and work for you as your representative. By trying to stop someone from being able to have that vote, you're trying to tell people that they're not going to be represented. Anytime that you're trying to strip someone who's already served their time, has done the rehabilitation, and is looking at that reentry back into this wonderful community we have, that's a problem for me. So I would 100% support that bill, would have pushed for it, gladly co-sponsored it. I know it started in the Senate, but would have gladly co-sponsored it, and probably have pushed with the assistance of some of BPI's people to get that done sooner.
Absolutely. Okay. And here, let's pivot right off to this, because this is all, and folks, a lot of these votes happen, like that one, for instance, that was pre-George Floyd, but the next flurry of a lot of these are going to be afterwards, the next couple. On June 10th, Mr. Santa Barbara voted no on a law establishing the Law Enforcement Misconduct Investigative Office for the state. Now, this is something that a lot of locales were trying to implement for civilian review boards to be able to do. Essentially having more teeth, having some sort of funding to have their own independent investigative bodies. And I'm pretty sure Schenectady does not have that, right? I don't think anything like that's even come close to being considered on the city council, correct?
It hasn't yet. That's all I can say at the moment, but there's some things that needs to get changed, and that's one of the things I looked at. They do not have a budget for this civilian review board yet in Schenectady, and it does not have the teeth that it needs. I applaud Albany for passing Proposition 7 this past year, giving their civilian review boards some subpoena power over officers to actually pull them in. I know that was to the bane of some PBA and the association in Albany, but it's something needed. Hatter touched on it perfectly. It's that accountability factor that comes with community policing that we want to see. It's not to damnify anybody for the job they're doing, but it's to make sure that they're doing it to the best of their ability, understanding that something and somebody's going to hold them accountable.
Absolutely.
All right, and then just the last one to end this little police reform topic here, and then we'll pivot to some other votes. Bill S8496 passed the House on June 9th of 2020. It was a bill that authorized disclosure of law enforcement disciplinary records. Now, this is something that I believe something in some form passed on the federal level prior to New York passing it. There was like some light version of this that had been passed not long before this point. But Mr. Santa Barbara voted against that again, overwhelmingly supported by the Democrats, and passed ultimately and signed into law by Andrew Cuomo. I think that this is also like this all these things are kind of part and parcel, right? Like, we're talking about having accountability, understanding, a lot of the times you'll have officers who will, have multiple misconduct complaints or eventually get suspended or whatever, and they just end up getting like transferred to another county or another city. What do you consider about bills like this? I know that I've seen some people that have concern when you have like high profile things that happen. For example, I know that Schenectady police officer, used a similar tactic that George Floyd was killed with not long after that, on a Guyanese gentleman that lived on Brandywine, I believe it was.
Yes. Yep.
And a lot of people cited, instances like that for not having like these disciplinary records and stuff as public record. you know, and concern of like backlash against police officers and things like that, and them being targeted. You know, what do you think? Do you think those concerns are legitimate, or do you think that like the public interest overwhelms that concern?
I think the public interest actually overwhelms that concern, and I think that I want to take everyone's in my district's concept where their point of view is seriously. However, I know that I don't want someone who's been reprimanded for violence against civilians several times on Syracuse being transferred into Schenectady and then doing the exact same thing. And we have no concept of understanding, and then we all have to look shocked, or we have to be retroactive to something that we could have seen. And that's the problem that comes in. And those who are watching, those who are going to be looking at those records are also people that are already invested. I mean, let's be honest, the average everyday person is probably not looking up every record of every officer just for fun.
Right.
But those that are coming in here that would need that access, such as the Civilian Review Board, when it gets labeled as, Officer John Doe, and we don't have any real name for it that came in, or the public safety. I know as a chair of public safety, I don't always get the names right now. And those something that should be, we can hold in a confidential set, right? If you're telling me that so-and-so is being transferred into the new hire panel and you want him to go through, that's something that needs to be known by the new hire panel so the questions can be vetted correctly. I want to give that officer a chance to explain what happened and why did you receive those? And if you're the fit for this community, vice versa, right? You may not want to come to Schenectady. This is a very close-knit community. It probably will be not good for you if you're that type of officer. So I want to make sure that it's working best for everyone. So you would have my support on that vote. And I believe that Santa Barbara probably wouldn't support that vote because he receives a lot of money from certain unions. So that would explain, his own personal benefit in not supporting that.
Yeah.
Right. And okay, just for the sake of time, I just want to leave off on this last insane vote that I might personally I think is insane. Our boy voted against the legalization of marijuana. Incredible.
And what date was that?
I'm trying to find it here. It was 2019 because that's when it passed.
It was 2019.
Yeah,
he did 2019. He voted against the legalization and decriminalization of marijuana, and then proceeded to rent out some of his properties to a CBD affiliate.
Yeah, I don't know. I had to bring that up because it's like, some of these votes are like, wow, like these are just like wild. And the reason I'm doing this, folks, the reason I'm highlighting these things is, I'm getting some of his mailers in the mail, and it's like, oh, I'm the only candidate endorsed by the Democratic Party in Schenectady and Montgomery County. And it's like, yeah, but like you're voting against the party on like huge issues. This isn't, so it's like, what use is that, whatever city or county or whatever endorsing you? What is that? Because, functionally, what are you doing with that vote? How are you representing the people who actually want these things that are wildly popular, not only the Democratic Party, but, nationwide?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Patter, do you have the show notes open? Do you want to, you guys want to pivot into, we'll go free form here and start rolling into recent events and stuff like that? You want to hop onto the Uvalde, Patter?
Yeah, absolutely. As someone who, and we've run episodes on this before, not Uvalde specifically, but we've talked about guns. I believe we did a podcast specifically with lads in Florida, right? Remember, we were talking right around the time there was another shooting. It's tough to keep track, but as someone who comes from a culture where guns are not a thing, I think the rest of the world kind of looks at America as someone who is a little bit crazy when it comes to this gun issue. Much like Ramon would agree with me, I've moved a little bit on this issue in terms of gun rights, right? And when I initially came to the States, I thought, what's the need? But obviously with the history and the your Second Amendment, all of that, the right to bear arms, fair enough. But just the weapons now that are in circulation that you're able to get, and just the ability for someone, if they have a want or a desire to cause complete mayhem, they can get a weapon that can do that in 60 seconds flat. I was thinking after the Uvalde, and I'd moved back to this area. My wife is from around here, but I lived in Texas for 4 years in Austin, and that was an open carry state. And luckily enough, I never came across a situation. But I went to school in Connecticut, and I actually tried out for the university I played for in Sandy Hook. What's the town? Can't even think of the name of the town. But I say that to say, like, you're not that far away, no matter where you're living, of coming into contact with something like a massacre or a shooting. And it's a uniquely American problem. When I saw the news reports of 19 kids dead, I have a 7-year-old myself. I think the youngest that died was 8 or 9. And it's just, what really irks me and annoys me is, I believe the last significant gun reform that was brought and passed was Lyndon B. Johnson. That was the last significant piece of gun reform, which is crazy to me to think. Now, obviously, we know the gun lobby's very powerful, but I think they're losing power. Because I think common sense is prevailing amongst at least the citizens, even gun owners. My question, Justin, is obviously you keep up with what's going on. You see the issues that are plaguing communities, whether big, small, schools, everything, any place. Do you see there being an opportunity to have gun reform, not just in New York, but I guess nationwide and on a federal level? Or do you think that the gun lobby is too strong? Do you think that Republicans are unwilling to budge on it? What's your take on it, on obviously what happened in Uvalde, but obviously looking forward as well?
I think, thank you. Thank you for the question. For me, Uvalde was heart-wrenching. We did the vigil here in Schenectady, and I'm a school teacher by trade, so it still breaks my heart. I had Reverend Natalie at the vigil read off those ages, so they've been seared into my brain because those are babies, and it breaks my soul to pieces to think about it. So it is something that we need. Gun reform is well beyond due, and I think that, as you said perfectly, common sense has to win out. And I know that, my counterparts across the aisle want to take their money, and they make sure their gun lobbyists are happy, and there's a whole party designed for it. And I get it. No one there is trying to take away every single person's right to a weapon. The dope thing that I talk about out of this whole situation, and I usually make a lot of my right-wing people mad when I say this, is that people pick and choose what part of that amendment they like. And the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms so that you can keep a well-stocked and fully ready militia. And the reality is that we have a U.S. government that is probably one of the most expensive saddest parts, that gets more money regularly and is the only thing that any president, no matter what side they are, make sure stays funded. Yeah. Because if you try to take money away from the military, it doesn't matter what side you're in, that's a problem.
Right.
So, the need for an assault rifle in New York State is minimal. I say that I've never seen a deer in any county walking with a bulletproof vest on. It never happened. And that's the reality. Those are things that we can look at as realistic. And that's in Texas, that's in California, that's in New York. In that short time span, we hit every part of the state with a public shooting. Recently, we just seen Philadelphia, where 3 shooters coordinated. This is something that needs to be taken seriously. And any state, any U.S. senator that's looking to block it on any side, that's not willing to come to compromise, needs to be taken to task. Any congressperson who's not willing to, on the federal level, to look at it, needs to be taken to task. In my state, anyone who doesn't look and vote for gun safety, or looks to take an ER, looks for an excuse so they can, keep their base because they don't want to be brave enough to do the right thing because they're more worried about their next election than the people, you need to be taken to task. It's needed. This is, we have some of the strictest gun laws in the country, as they tell me, but yet it didn't stop an 18-year-old from getting a ghost gun and going to Tops in Buffalo. It's ironic that's 200 miles exactly from where he started, away from his home in Schenectady. He could have went in the other direction, and it could have happened right here at Price Chopper.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just it's a very real thing. And anyone who's willing to disassociate themselves from how real it can be in your community, your neighborhood, doesn't need to represent us.
And you know, it's almost parody at times when I listen to some of the solutions that are brought about by the other side. They talk about, you know, mental health, like that doesn't happen in other countries where people have, you know, struggle with mental health. They talk about the dissolution of the, you know, Christian family. They act like people aren't turning away from that in other countries. The common denominator and the uniquely American problem is the access to guns. They say there's like over 400 million guns in the United States. And I don't think anybody is under the illusion that by putting in some common sense gun reform, you're going to stop all mass shootings. Right. But to not even try and not even implement it and make it harder to, you know, if you want to do something like this, at least put blocks in the way. You're not going to get 100% of them, but at least do something. And what I struggle with, and, you know, I speak to family back home, they just can't believe that nothing is done. And, you know, often they say, if nothing was done after Sandy Hook, then, you know, will anything ever be done? And I think, you know, there is some momentum growing, I guess, at this current moment. But what I've seen, you know, throughout my time here, when something like this happens, is that momentum will start. They'll kind of hold firm and it kind of fizzles away. So I'm hoping there was something passed, I believe, in the House today. It'll probably stall in the Senate, but Ramon, you said something to me, I think, when we chatted briefly after the Uvalde thing is, you know, put a bill together, make these people vote on it and make them, you know, show themselves for what they are by voting these things down.
Well, and you know, that's obviously always the, you know, anyone who listens to me rail on this show is for, you know, federal level Democrats, you know, you have to strike when the iron's hot. You have to know when the time is to take advantage. And, you know, they went on leave right after and didn't do it. So, you know, honestly, you know, I'll give my 2 cents on it. You know, the national conversation is honestly a hopeless one, even with the NRA pretty much in its death like throes right now, as far as funding goes and organizationally. Like they're pretty much it's pretty much like you know, it's no different than like you know, a bumper sticker, like a thing that just people support now. At this point, it's not really organizationally a strength that any longer. And you know, there's still some money flowing on the federal level as far as contributions and stuff to politicians, but you know, even either, you know, they're even saying it themselves. You know, I'm pretty sure they filed for bankruptcy a couple times in the last couple of years. So on the federal level, you know, I'm pretty much just I'm upset that it's just being treated as a culture war issue and it's not like an actual you know, health and safety topic. That's the most bothersome thing. But there is some light you know, happening. What was it, 3 days ago? New York State passed a comprehensive 10 bill package that closed a ton of gun loopholes. What is it? They barred the purchase of semi-automatic rifles by anyone under the age of 21 by form of requiring a license. And this one's pretty big, and I'm actually shocked that this took until something happening in another state, because I'm pretty sure this wasn't the case in Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. They passed a law prohibiting the purchase of body armor, with exception for those in specified professions. Now, this to me is one of the most like untalked about topics around gun reform, and the reason where a lot of my cynicism comes from about having hope on it for any reform to be happening on the federal level, because police unions have been fighting for the ban of body armor for like 10 years. Like it's been and if the most powerful unions in the country can't accomplish this, you know, the NYPD, like that's, you know, that's a little concerning for me. You know, so, I mean, but hey, you know, there you go. It happened, you know, applaud them for, you know, passing some good stuff here. The only thing out of this set of legislation that I'd like to get your take on, Mr. Chairs, you know, oh yeah, and I should mention, it expands. They passed a separate bill expanding the list of people who could file extreme risk protection orders and require law enforcement to file ERPOs under specified sets of circumstances. That's good. You know, it's basically buffering that already existing red flag laws. You know, which that's good. I think that, you know, if this is a community issue, you know what I mean? Like, if you look at the story of Uvalde, you know, all the people in that guy's family and peers that, you know, literally, I mean, people were joking, like saying like, oh, he's, you know, most likely to be a school shooter. Laws like that are very important because, you can't always, we can't expect there to just be, in the example of Uvalde, how much of the criticism has fallen at the feet of the police, which, deservedly so, for them like waiting outside and listening to children die for an hour, completely unacceptable. But there also needs to be a proactive side too. Every law enforcement can't just be reactive. We see the result of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you leave, good police with nothing to do except have a hammer, and then everything's a nail. That's what ends up happening. But what I wanted to get your take on real quick, Justin, is they also put through a law that was in a package of like eliminating the grandfathering of high capacity feeding devices, micro stamping of new semi-automatic pistols. I don't really know too much about that. I want to dive into that one. But the last piece of this package is they requiring social media companies to improve response to and reporting of hateful content. So I figured this would be an interesting conversation to have with you briefly around censorship. Not necessarily, I don't just mean censorship in the way of like censoring an individual, but that's what we're talking about in effect, is governments relying more and more on companies to, play a role in being, that the proactive behavior we were just talking about on their platforms. I want to get your take on this, because this expands into a larger conversation, something that, you in the assembly might not necessarily have as much influence on because you're not running for Congress any longer. But if, the states are going to start passing laws like this too, I think it's an interesting new sort of arena we're in, because previously these things weren't really being considered. Social media legislation on the federal level has been hot topic for, since before Trump or while Trump was running in 2015, and it hasn't stopped, all the way from Kamala Harris literally calling for Trump's banning on Twitter, up until now. And how do you view that? Do you think the state has, and I just mean on a philosophic level, I don't mean like actually, I don't want you to actually like put in your mouth and see how it tastes this exact vote. I just mean as a general idea. Do you think that that's something the state should engage in, or do you think that ideally it's something the federal government should be attempting to regulate with these giant multinationals? And do you think that there is really much use in or utility in New York State, for example, trying to implement this kind of legislation or regulation?
I mean, I think it definitely has its venture. I do understand the importance of not censoring people or just because we disagree with them, but I also know that at one point they had talked about cyber police in Schenectady, when there was like hate groups that were popping up and people were using each other to bounce ideas of how they would kill a certain amount of group or a certain type of group or a different ethnicity. That was something that was huge at one point, and the ability to be able to be proactive in that situation. I think of Buffalo, and I think of the young man who wrote a 189-page manifesto. So my first thought is somewhere he must have exhibited some kind of signs, because if you're writing out, this means that you're planning, you're processing. And then they looked into his social media later on, and he had, said that he was going to do this. And then he went and did it. This is things that, as much as I don't want to censor anyone. I don't want to take your right of speech ever away from you. But I also don't want you to be using social media as a platform to show how you're going to murder a bunch of people, or to help yourself create a plan or format. But you're Google searching of, how can I purchase an illegal gun into New York State? Those are certain things that are going to send up red flags. It is definitely, if it's a means of being able to stop a mass shooting, it's something that we should look into. Make sure it's done properly, not reactive, not we're doing it because this is the moment, but something to take a very serious look at, of understanding what the new concept is here that's being used regularly. My understanding is the 3 shooters in Philadelphia used a social media platform to help plan themselves and sent a bunch of posts back and forth. That's something that's so simple that they can be looking at the federal level of how do you stop 3 shooters that planned it on social media, that you could have allowed to not be a shooting in Philadelphia Square full of tourists.
Right. And, I think, if I can just say, I think that's an easy optical win for social media companies, is to, police that sort of thing. I mean, they've been under criticism when you think back to Cambridge Analytica, and obviously there's been a big spotlight on their handling of things like the election and hate speech and this, that, and the other. I think something like this is an easy win for them optically, to be crude about it. But honestly, it's you talked about how the Buffalo shooter spoke about it on one platform and coordinated it on another. Don't tell me that these platforms don't have the ability to at least, send up that red flag. And, one data point, as we all know, is not something that, immediately means someone's going to do something. But if you were to look at the data points of the Uvalde shooter, who, when he turned the age to be able to buy an AR-15, that in tandem with, his posting on social media, if the right person is looking at that, that could be a knock on the door. That could save life. That could save some time. So I think it's a no-brainer for me, and I don't think it's infringing on anybody's rights. All it is doing is continue to, I guess, protect the people, which we all want.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. Okay, so I'd like to pivot, actually, something that I wasn't really planning, but now that I got you here, I think it's a good question to ask. I don't really know what your opponent's stance is on the expansion of abortion rights in New York State. Me and Patter and I were recently at a rally that came up not too long after Alito's majority opinion leaked, and we are coming up on the precipice of that probably being ruled on. I think a lot of legal experts were estimating that should be coming through sometime mid to late June. So we're right here. And while we got you on, I'd like to hear you, your commentary. I know that there is, from what I've read, there are a lot of different ways that a lot of legislators in the state house have been looking at attacking this issue, as far as codifying, some existing law around abortion rights into the state constitution. And I just wanted to hear, do you have any takes on what's going on, where your positions would be if you were to join the assembly? For example, I think right now New York State's got the Reproductive Health Act, which allows a pregnancy to be terminated after 24 weeks if the woman's life is in danger or the fetus is not viable. Now, I think the real issue at question here is, and what a lot of the activists are calling for, is they want it to be added into the state constitution, which would basically trigger an immediate legal fight if Roe were to be rescinded by the Supreme Court. So, where do you fall on that? What are your ideas? What are you hearing from constituents and, people you already associate with who are involved with these issues directly in the political realm?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been a hot button. I'm a full supporter of women's rights. I want to make sure that that's known, that they have me and I got their back, to make sure that their rights is protected. And we need to make sure New York State is the leader in this, that we don't see anything being rescinded on our end for where we stand from the federal level, from the Supreme Court's decisions, which I've did some digging after some of our conversations of some of the things that they're looking at right now. And I'm going to tell you, I'm really disappointed that the Supreme Court is bringing back bills from 50, 60 years ago. I think some of them may need to retire because they're having flashbacks and they're forgetting what they originally fought for. Mm-hmm. But, for me, I need to make sure that I'm 100% fighting to protect reproductive rights and that the women that need it and their women's rights are not being impended on in New York State. To the first question, I believe my opponent has not made a statement in support of it. I think he did vote on it after originally not supporting it way back when it came up for the first Senate expansion a few years back. It was 16 or 18, but that is also hard for him to do because he wants to run on the conservative line. Right. So, he has to play his game, and I get it. He's who he is, smiles and comes through. But, when you're taking certain money or you're doing certain things and you want to run as a conservative, the Conservative Party has their platform right on their webpage out for everyone to see where they stand on certain things. They want to take away abortion rights even for women who were raped. That's the type of mindset that brings to certain things that we can't have. We don't need that retro flow back at any point. So I want to make sure that, everyone knows that I 100% will continue to fight and protect women's rights.
Good to know, man. Good to know.
And just a follow-up question for you, Justin. We talked before we got online here that you've been out pounding the pavement, knocking on doors. What are some of the issues that you're hearing from constituents that have been, that kind of fall in line, obviously, with your own platform? But, what is the things that have been coming up? Has it been mainly local issues, or have you been hearing stuff on national stuff? Just kind of to pick your brain on that a little bit.
When we're at the door, I'm hearing everything. This district, I have 2 counties. I have Montgomery County, Schenectady County. Each issue that each town faces, is going to be a little bit different. So if I go to Rotterdam, the big one now is you have a lot of retired teachers and nurses out that way who are seeing a spike in their water bill that's being added from the pumps that the water meter that's being put in. That was a hot button topic. And they're asking for assistance and at least some representation to better explain to them how the jump is happening. When I'm in Schenectady, we're talking about education and housing, healthcare, and fighting against gun violence. When I'm in Scotia, the same thing. They want to make sure that education is top, healthcare is top. Montgomery County needs a lot of love. I've talked to them about a ton of things. You have certain families there that have been there for years, and you have families that are living in such a way that the housing situation, there's holes in their roofs inside the apartment building. And they're facing predatory landlords that are trying to kick them out for asking them to fix broken glass when they have children. So this is something that to be able to represent them, to have the ability to be available regularly and them to see me is so huge. I said before we got on here, it is extremely exciting to me to have this corner office, right, and be available for people to come knock on the door and talk to me. And I'm always one for, if you're coming to yell at me, at least let me start my tea water first, and then I'll let you yell at me after, So it's I'm here for you, though, because that's the representation that we need and we deserve.
Excellent. And you talk about your team. I guess, is there people you want to mention? And I don't want to single out anybody in your team, but it sounds like you have a good group behind you. I commented on the mailer that I got in the door. It was very impressive. I liked the aesthetic to it. Give me an idea who your team is, or at least the core of your team, and if you want to.
Absolutely. First, I'm going to shout out all my volunteers, because I think of them as part of my team as well. Every single one of them that donates that time to me. I appreciate all that effort. Time is a big thing. My team is amazing. I have Albany County Legislator Sam Fine as my campaign manager, Orlando Huntley Jr., business owner, as my chief of staff. I have wonderful field directors and organizers, Veronica Pena, Selwa Khan, and Alexandra List, all doing amazing work every single day. A huge shout out to my treasurer, who I trust everything with, is my mother. I'm not going to lie to you. That's, if you can't trust your mom with your money, you're in a bad shape. Way. So, it's big. Marie Borowski, Monique King. I have a big, beautiful team that works hard. My cousin Hayes Stamper giving me technical advice for everything for our website when he first builds. LaFonso Bonner. It's amazing. David Penn out in Albany, who has been creating these wonderful mailers you're seeing for us and doing this on his own time. He's done this. He stepped up huge. When I talk about we're a grassroots campaign and he's doing this, you guys know how expensive some of this digital art can be. Right. And he's doing this out of love for me as a candidate and as a person, which I appreciate. He puts in his hard work for me, and it's greatly appreciated. So I have an amazing team, and I don't think I forgot anybody. I think I named everybody. But I want to make Christopher Lansing as well, who organizes my paid canvassers that are out here right now that work with me and walk with me. So, this group of people that I have, like I said, it is such a well-oiled machine. We're hitting momentum, perfect time. And I feel blessed to have all these people around me keep me going, man. I really do.
Excellent. And, important dates for us. You want to mention any important dates coming up?
Yeah. Oh, I can't think. Oh, no, I can. June 18th, early voting. Early voting starts June 18th through June 26th. The election day is June 28th. We are out giving rides. Message me, email me if you need a ride to a poll. I'm asking people when I'm at doors, what is your election plan? If you need to go early, I'm giving rides. I'm helping people still do absentee ballot sign up if you're struggling with the online website. Even if you're not voting for me, I want you to just vote, because your vote matters so much. Have your voice heard. I want to make sure you're able to get out. So June 18th through 26th, early voting for this primary. June 28th, election day. I need you out there. If you want to see change, I am asking this time, vote for Justin Chairs. I appreciate that.
Excellent. I'll make sure we'll put all those things like website, important dates in the show notes as well. Ramon, you have any more questions that you want to bounce off Justin there?
Yeah, we could keep going all night, but I'm trying to be sensitive to my man's time. I know he's got a lot of work to do. That was great. That was a great pitch. I love that at the end there. That was awesome, man. No, that was just thank you so much for giving us some of your time tonight. Like I said, I know you're very busy. We're coming into the the last leg of the race here. You want to hop back on, you're welcome at any point in the next few weeks. You want to, or
Yes.
hey, after you win, you want to jump back on.
Yes, absolutely.
We'd always appreciate
Absolutely.
the victory lap return. You can come get your challenge coin for your second time.
That's right. Let's get it going. Foreign and domestic. If they're not watching this podcast, I don't know what they're doing. We got to share this to everybody. Amazing.
We could do a live report from the field like we did when Omar won too.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure, man. And when we do have Justin back on, I think we're gonna try a different streaming platform because OBS has just been killing me the whole time. Folks, I apologize for a lot of the technical difficulties. We're gonna try something different next time for multi chats like this. This is my last hurrah. I will be unsubscribing to this, but we'll have audio form, folks. It'll be up.
Yes, we listen. We made it through. It was amazing. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks very much for your time, man. Best of luck with everything. I know it's going to be a busy next few weeks, and then hopefully once you're elected, you get straight to work.
That's right. Yeah, we can't wait. We definitely can't wait. So I'm excited to get going.
All right, brother. We appreciate